This is GRL Raw, the podcast where the GRL team tells you why they're different. Who the hell are they? Why should you want them fighting for you? The industry leader in law with over 180 years of combined experience. This team is here to shed light on crucial topics in law to keep you aware and informed, because it comes back to the primary point. We give a damn.
Welcome, Season 2, Episode 2. You may recognize the fact that we're wearing the exact same outfit as Episode 1.
Episode 1 about 5 minutes ago.
Yeah, confession.
Cracked another beer. Here we go.
Here we go.
I'm not doing dry January, though, so.
Why you gotta rat me out?
I know.
This is absolutely a beer, technically. Thanks for that. So we left off. It kind of helps because now the episodes flow together.
Yep.
Next time we'll have changes of clothes in between so we don't have to dime ourselves out.
True.
We left off with the concept of respectfully defiant.
Yep. With
schools and government and don't tread on us kind of stuff with constitutional rights.
Yep.
And so we have, again, we talked about we want to go through some historic cases. I did not know this case existed.
You were super excited when you found it, too.
I was like a school kid.
Yep.
All over again. And I found it when we were preparing for looking up the constitutional rights in schools, searches, and that kind of stuff. I had no idea this case existed. And I'm kind of want some money back from Drake for not teaching me this from my law school, our law school.
Should we, yeah, we could sue Drake maybe.
Or at least send them a respectfully defiant letter asking why they didn't teach us about Bartels versus state of Iowa.
It's a big case.
It's huge.
It is.
This was an Iowa Supreme Court case.
Yep.
Got that part right. Not 8th Circuit. Iowa Supreme Court case that made its way all the way to the United States Supreme Court.
Yep.
And there seems to be a common theme with Iowa messing up with laws or government conduct in and around wartime.
Yep.
Wartime. This case actually goes back further than Tinker.
What's the year? What year are we in?
1919.
And what's happening? What war?
Just got over.
Okay.
They call it the Great War.
Okay.
World War I just finished up. I think World War I finished kind of towards the end of 1918. I did look that up on Wikipedia before getting going here. And the Iowa Legislature decided that they were going to do something to remedy what they claimed was a problem during the war about people that soldiers who got drafted that had difficulty with the English language.
Okay.
So there were some citizens that got drafted that apparently English was not their first language. And so there was difficulty with communications, allegedly, during World War I. Mm-hmm. And so what did Iowa do?
They passed a law.
They did.
That said, no teaching school, all school? Yeah, school in a language other than English.
Secular subjects.
Okay.
They said you cannot teach secular subjects in any school, private, public, anything, if it's not in English. Now, you can, after the 8th grade, teach a foreign language.
But not before 8th grade.
Not before the tender years.
Those are the tender years for being
indoctrinated into good Americana.
Yeah.
And that's what they flat out. So this goes, and by the way, this tees in again with what we talk about with trash rips, what we talk about with governmental arrogance, saying we're going to pass laws and tell everybody what to do, and we haven't read the Constitution.
Yep.
Because this was a legit pass the law. They imposed a penalty. And they said, this is the law.
Yep.
And going along with the respectfully defiant theme, our hero of this case, every case like this has a hero.
Yep.
Right? And the hero does what?
They violate it.
They break the law respectfully, defiantly.
Yeah, they respectfully break the law.
Respectfully break the law.
Respectfully get a criminal charge.
To get the imposition of the penalty.
Yep.
Because what happens when the penalty gets imposed?
Appeal.
We call that permission to appeal.
Yep.
That's how we kind of unsalt the wounds if we lose a case, too.
Yep.
We say, oh, that's a permission to appeal. Instructor Bartels, I'm assuming it's a male.
Okay.
Back in 1919, but it doesn't say
Okay.
in the opinion. Instructor Bartels was an instructor at St. John's Evangelical Lutheran Church
Okay.
in Maxfield, Iowa.
No idea where that one is.
Actually, it was Maxfield Township.
Okay.
I believe it was northeast
Okay.
Iowa, around Bremer County, Waverly area.
Okay.
Bartels knew can't teach in English, or you have to teach in English.
Yep.
Bartels happened to speak German and was a teacher in a very German community and a very German school. A lot of immigrants that were citizens from Germany. And he decided, hold my Stein, I'm going to go ahead and teach my damn classes in German.
Okay.
What does the government do?
They were not happy.
No, not happy.
And they imposed a hefty fine
Hefty fine.
of $25.
Smacked him.
Yep.
Smacked Bartels and said, Bartels, bad Bartels.
Bad Bartels.
Bad Bartels, here's your fine, $25.
Yep.
Now, did Bartels say, okay, I'll write you out? I mean, that back then, what is that in today's money?
We looked it up the other day. It's like about $500.
Yeah. I mean, instead of just writing the check, right, for the thing, he said, again,
I think this is wrong.
hold my Stein.
Yep.
I'm going to go talk to the Supreme Court. Took it all the way up to the Iowa Supreme Court.
Yep.
Iowa Supreme Court did what?
I don't
I'm putting you on
remember.
the spot.
Yeah, that was. I'm going to say they said it was fine.
Yep. They said, bad Bartels.
Yep.
$25, pay the fine. And Bartels said,
I don't think I like that. Hold my sign.
yep, hold my Stein. We're going to the Supreme Court.
Yep.
And back then, to get to the Supreme Court from Maxwell Township, Iowa,
How do you get your brief to the Supreme Court of the United States?
I was trying to figure that out.
Okay.
I was 1919. I mean, we don't have highways, right? I don't think we have any like interstates yet. Not even close.
I'm not sure. I don't really remember those
No,
days too good.
I don't. I don't think so.
I don't know. That like sent me into a panic, honestly, thinking about how you submit a brief.
Pony Express, maybe.
Yeah. How do you know it got there?
Railroad,
Okay.
maybe. Yeah. How do you mail?
I don't know.
We should have done more research.
Well, maybe this will come up again.
we were dereliction of our own duties to promised everybody quality research, and we can't figure out how you got your
How
written-
did they file the brief?
How did they file the brief? That
The important question.
but what they did do is I like this. The church denomination
Yep.
had other schools
Okay.
in other states that also passed similar laws.
So this was a thing.
It was a thing. Nebraska did it, of course.
Yep.
Ohio,
Okay.
Missouri.
Okay.
They were the three that were identified, and the church in those states preemptively struck against the legislation and asked for what's called an injunction.
Okay.
Okay, that's a civil lawsuit where they sue the state and say, you can't enforce this bad law
Yep.
because it violates the Constitution. But this is what I like. So in Iowa, we do shit right.
Yes.
We're willing to stand up, respectfully defiant, take our lumps. Nebraska
Not so much.
follows our lead,
Oh, okay.
copies,
Yeah.
right? They're like, oh, but please don't hurt us. We're
Yep.
like, come on. It's an Iowa special. Okay. So these other states joined us. And really what it came down to, the U.S. Supreme Court, even in 1919, I think it was decided, I want to say 1922 or something like that.
Okay.
It took a while to get the briefs to the
Yeah,
Supreme
yeah.
Court.
Someone had to walk there.
Right. They're like, no. Like, seriously, there's no reasonable fit between what you're trying to accomplish, government, and the law that you've imposed. This is unreasonable. Parents and teachers have the right to have their children taught the way they want.
Yep.
And you can't interfere with that in this way. It makes no sense. Interestingly, in Nebraska, they did not prohibit the teaching. And the Nebraska case is what decided it all.
Yep.
And then in the Iowa case, it said, just see the Nebraska case. I think because those facts were set up better.
Yeah.
Because their law allowed the teaching or still allowed the teaching of different subjects in the dead languages.
Okay.
Latin, Greek,
Yep.
Hebrew. And so they're like, well, you can't say you can't teach in these languages, or you can teach in these languages, but you can't teach in these other languages.
Singling out people.
Can't do that.
No.
Can't do that. So that's our historical background.
Yeah. And just wild.
Wild case. We found it at the other case. It really doesn't cleanly fit into what we're talking about today,
It's interesting.
but it's super interesting. Hopefully people realize you shouldn't pass laws that say can't teach in foreign languages if people want to be taught in foreign languages.
And
Arkansas.
students have a right to express themselves, I'm sure, in foreign languages. So,
Ooh.
yeah.
Ooh, that's good.
They haven't gotten that up there yet. Maybe someday someone will walk a brief down in the United States Supreme Court with that one.
Get the locomotive ready. Here we go.
All right. So after Bartels, now we're going to talk about current event.
So we're going from 1919.
Yeah, we're going to jump forward about 100 years.
Yeah.
100 years for 104 years.
New problems.
New problems. And this is a big problem.
This is a huge problem. This is super sad. But there's a lot to talk about.
There is. So at the time we're filming this right now, 5 minutes after episode 1, something that just recently happened on the news was a 6-year-old first grader shot his elementary school teacher.
6-year-old?
6 years old.
That's unreal.
I don't remember much about first grade, which really puts it into perspective when you're older of how young.
I don't remember anything about 6th grade. Or first
grade. Yeah.
Well, 6th grade either, really, honestly.
Yeah, truly. So Virginia, about a week ago at this point, a 6-year-old brought a gun to school, took it out of his backpack while his teacher was teaching her lesson, fired the gun, shot her. She was shot in the hand and the chest, I believe, in serious condition at first, but doing better now.
Do we know, is it 1 shot, 2 shot?
1 shot.
So through the hand.
Yep.
Okay.
16 other kids were in the classroom. The teacher was 25 years old, and the gun was the mother's, and he brought it to school. So since then, they took him into custody immediately.
They arrested a 6-year-old?
Yep. I got the news notification on my phone. I took a screenshot of it and sent it to a group message of my friends. And I was just like, just a casual Friday in the world that we live in. A 6-year-old is in police custody.
Jesus Christ. Can you imagine?
No. I can't imagine being an adult that cares about this child more so than the child, I would assume. I don't know that they would have much of an understanding of what's going on unless they have prior knowledge.
Help me defend. Yeah, so I was going to say, there's a lot of different areas of law that this covers.
Yeah.
But first things first, they arrested this kid, took him into custody. Help me say he's not going to go to juvie or prison or whatever the hell for shooting a teacher?
So one of the things that the officers have publicly said multiple times at this point is that they know that this shooting was intentional. So they're conflicted. Why? Because police officers, law enforcement, a lot of people think that when a crime is committed, this is something we talk about like on a regular basis in this office. We defend people that have allegedly committed crimes or have committed crimes, and a lot of times we talk about the fact that it's a humbling experience, right? This is a person, this is a human being. This case, it's a 6-year-old.
Freaking kid.
Yeah. And you're
barely out of pull-ups.
Truly.
Yeah.
And maybe isn't. Like,
you think you have to be to go to school? At least that's what I was told.
Okay. Maybe not in Virginia, though. We don't know.
Sure.
But it's wild to think of a child in this situation and the parents. But he's looking at potentially going through the juvenile justice system at this point and having him in custody. And based on their statements of it being intentional, I would almost think that that's probably the route they're going to go.
Is there a defense to that?
Defense to what?
To say everything says this kid shot the teacher.
Yes.
Because it seems to
potentially, at least. Yeah. Which would be that it is a 6-year-old that might still be in pull-ups because we're in Virginia.
Yeah.
Just
throwing shade for no reason.
But okay. How does a 6-year-old form an intent to seriously injure their teacher?
I don't see how it happens.
I don't either.
I mean, it's like, the mind of a 6-year-old is a fascinating thing. Hell, the mind of an 18-year-old is a fascinating place. Scary, but fascinating. Intent is an interesting, because they got to show specific intent to harm or to kill if they try to go with that too. There's going to be a lot of shrinking going on. There's going to be a lot of psychiatric testimony, I'm guessing.
And basically what the state would have to prove would be that the 6-year-old had the intellectual capability of understanding that his action of pulling the trigger would cause harm.
Real harm. To a real person, to his real teacher. And that was what he had intended to do. And that, for a 6-year, I don't know. And understand and appreciate the consequences of the act, all that fun stuff.
The forever nature of shooting someone.
And I thought this was interesting is compare that to the fact that we have statutorily said children under the age of 14 don't have the capacity to consent to sexual conduct.
Yep.
Well,
14?
Under 14.
Okay.
Under 14. At least in Iowa.
Okay.
In Iowa. Under no circumstances. Okay. And so we put that standard, but then another standard. We looked. I don't know. Did you find? I didn't find anything that says this is a cutoff for criminal liability age-wise.
I didn't find anything.
In other words, it's a child is 0 to 18.
Yep.
There's no set age where they can't be prosecuted yet.
Yeah.
At least that we could find.
And we talked about this the other day. It's like a real thing, even here in Iowa. When we were doing some of the research on it, I pulled up a research paper I wrote in law school. And it was about policing elementary schools, high schools, middle schools. And there were multiple children in Iowa in elementary school that had been arrested in a school year. Multiple kids a year that are being arrested. It's just a wild concept.
It's hard to wrap your head around.
It really is. In an elementary school.
Yeah. That's...
Like, there's like finger painting on the walls. Right. Like that's children.
So there's some other questions that come up. I mean, that's the criminal liability if they choose to prosecute the child in delinquency in juvenile court. They can't waive them. At least in Iowa, they wouldn't be able to waive them even if, forcible. No, they're over 14.
Yeah.
But then there's civil liability. So we obviously have criminal. That's where the government's trying to put people in jail, hold them criminally responsible for a crime.
Yep.
And then the other side of it is, okay, what about the fact that this child did real harm to his teacher and to another person? How do we make her whole? And that's where the civil justice system that Corey talked about a couple episodes ago comes into play.
Yep.
With lawsuits against potentially, you can't sue a child. That's what's weird.
You can sue a child.
You can.
Yeah.
You can sue a child.
It's a torts case where he pulls a it's like an overweight
You're
lady
right.
and he pulls the chair
Out
She
from
falls.
under.
Yeah, Brian B. Daly. I'll never forget it.
There's
a few things from law school that stick with you.
So you can sue a child.
Yep.
It's hard to collect
You
against
would be
a child.
suing basically their parents.
Right. And that there's in Iowa, we have a couple of different things that can happen with parent liability.
Yep.
Well, before we get to that, should we back up? Mom of child,
Owned
her
the
gun. She on the hook?
So there's a Virginia potential crime that she might be on the hook for. And the crime is that, if I can find it. Oh, it is a misdemeanor to recklessly leave a loaded gun unsecured in a way that could cause injury to a child under the age of 14. Weird law. Under the age of 14. Reckless is a higher standard than negligence.
Right.
But the statute was designed to try to make sure that children don't hurt each other with guns.
What about children and adults? Yeah.
So it didn't really take into account the situation that happened in the school when the victim's 25.
They're busy writing laws right now.
They absolutely are.
Yeah. In Iowa, potentially child endangerment.
Yep.
But again,
another one I found is there is making firearms available to minors is a law in Iowa.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
So that would be one that would fit.
Yep. There's exceptions. Like if you as a parent are over the age of 21 and your child is under the age of 21, then you can directly supervise them with a firearm.
But you can't give them a gun and let them take it to school.
Yeah.
Okay.
For obvious reasons.
Obvious reasons.
Yeah. So that's potential criminal liability with the mom, but unsure at this point about criminal for both of them. But one thing we know that probably would have merit might not be able to collect anything. We don't know anything about these people, but is that there is an action in civil court.
100% action. So we looked this up. It's interesting. In Iowa, you can actually sue a minor child, and the parents are liable for the unlawful acts of a child.
Okay.
Now it's only $2,000 per incident.
Interesting.
If there's more than one incident, it can't exceed $5,000 in liability. But parents are liable under Iowa law for the unlawful acts of their kid. The other thing that could happen is you can sue the parent for failing to properly supervise their child. So a parent can be held liable in situations where their own negligence was a proximate cause of the harm that the child causes. This would be the perfect example of how and when this worked. And then the other thing that came to my mind is, are we concerned at all? This was a 9mm pistol. With the fact that a 6-year-old is able to pull the trigger. Like, I guarantee you the gun manufacturers get sued out of this. I promise you that's going to happen. It always happens. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. I promise you that. I hope it should happen. And people can debate it back and forth. Well, what about, guns aren't meant for children. Yes. But there's going to be something that comes of that.
And obviously, like, children get guns.
They do.
Like,
because here's what I'm looking at. My youngest is 10.
Okay.
He got a BB gun for Christmas. He likes shooting targets off the back porch. And he has difficulty with the damn Red Ryder BB gun at times, being able to pump it, to crank it. And the trigger isn't an easy trigger to pull. So we're talking a 6-year-old.
Yeah.
I bet the 6-year-old couldn't run and use maybe it's just in Virginia, they start learning guns early, I promise you. But learning how to handle a Red Ryder BB gun is going to be difficult.
Yeah.
I'll be curious. It's going to be really interesting to see what happens. The other thing is, did you know, I just looked this up before we started.
Oh gosh, what's it going to be?
Apparently, there's rumors that school officials had word and had notice that there was a possible gun on campus before this happened.
I don't even know what to do with that information. How do
They
we,
didn't either, clearly.
Clearly. How? How do you do nothing? How do you do nothing?
It's interesting because we've started handling more of these school-related type cases.
Yep.
Sex assaults on campus, bullying, harassment, assaults of kids on campus that have had some traumatic consequences. Mm-hmm. And one thing that we're learning is there is an utter lack of effective communication amongst staff, teachers, and more importantly, administration and security.
Yep.
And that's how that happens, right? And to give them a little bit of a defense, in elementary school, you don't have that in your mind as a possible
It's
situation.
not like a high school.
Correct.
Yeah.
But I guarantee you there's going to be breakdowns in communication that are going to get found out on this. School district is going to have problems if they had some type of notice and didn't effectively respond, because that brings us to the topic.
Suing schools.
The substantive topic, taking the paddle to schools. And people don't appreciate, I think you young kids these days don't appreciate the paddles in schools, because there once was a day where they'd have a paddle and they'd drill holes in the paddle to make it sting more, and they spank the butts of students. I
might have graduated high school with over 2.5 if that was a thing, but I didn't.
Shucks. Well, there's hope
but
for
yeah,
everybody.
no, that was obviously never a thing in my lifetime. But all right, let's talk about schools.
Let's talk about schools.
What do you think? What's the theory of a lawsuit under if the schools had notice?
Failing to protect, failing to supervise. So there students. So to follow up last episode, students have constitutional rights that they're allowed to exercise, but there's other basic rights that students have in an education setting. Iowa has made it very clear that schools have an affirmative duty to take all reasonable steps necessary to protect their students.
Okay.
And one of the quotes I took from one of the cases is, teaching and learning cannot take place without the physical and mental well-being of the students. The school premises, in short, must be safe and welcoming. That's
good for Iowa.
It's phenomenal.
Yeah.
It should be that way. So administratively and institutionally, they are required to take reasonable steps to train their staff, communication issues, right? Supervise their staff, but then also to protect and supervise students. And any breakdown in those duties that results in harm to somebody is actionable. A lawsuit can be filed, and oftentimes are filed, especially when an egregious harm comes because of it.
Yep.
You know, sex assaults, physical assaults, those types of things.
Or like severe mental trauma.
Yep.
We've seen all of it.
Yep.
Or a teacher getting shot.
Exactly. Teachers have the right to be safe in their workplace, you know, although that'll be interesting because she was working.
Workers' comp.
Workers' compensation. Does it fall outside of workers' compensation? We're learning about
Is
that
it going to be gross negligence if they knew about it?
Mm-hmm. That'll be interesting.
Yeah.
So there are different rights and sources of rights that can be enforced through a civil legal action, through a civil lawsuit. And like we talked last time, education or the Constitution bestows certain rights that are actionable if they're offended by a school. Question of the day: is education a fundamental right?
It is not.
Whatever.
I know.
No?
It's not.
You're right.
I know. It's sad. It should be.
It should be, but the U.S. Supreme Court has said the U.S. Constitution does not make education a fundamental legal right?
They said it's close.
It's really close. It's super important, but it doesn't. The top level of rights are those in the Bill of Rights, and they're considered fundamental rights. Education's up there, but it's not that up there.
Yep.
Okay. Iowa, interestingly, has not decided that issue under the Iowa Constitution.
Interesting.
They talked about it and then said, but we don't have to reach it, so we're going to save that for another day.
Huh. I did not know that.
I didn't know that either. This is one thing I enjoy about this. It forces us to learn things like Bartels,
Yep.
tinker, things that we never would have known or probably cared to really know. And then once you know it, you're like, sweet, I totally
Once
care
you
to
know it,
that.
you know it.
Yeah. So, but there are certain constitutional rights that are actionable if the school infringes on them.
Yep. That's how we got Tinker and Morse v. Frederick, and they were all bringing actions based on their constitutional rights, either by injunction. I think both of them were injunction, but.
And the injunction and or civil lawsuits saying you're violating my rights.
Yep.
Therefore, I want to bring them, or I want to bring a lawsuit to remedy that.
Yep.
Fourth Amendment is another area, right to be free from unreasonable searches and seizures. So what's the difference between a search and a seizure?
A seizure is using authority.
Medical condition.
Using authority to confine you.
Restrain liberty.
Yeah.
Yep.
Restrain your liberties.
Okay.
So as soon as they flick on the lights when you're getting pulled over, assuming you pull over. Gosh, I don't know, like being in a room with multiple police officers, especially not us. If we were in a room full of police officers, they'd probably hold lawyers to a different standard. But like children, what we're talking about, you have multiple police officers in full uniform, hands on their belts, one of them standing in front of a door. Are you free to leave, or have they detained you?
Yep. And then a search is?
A search is a search. A search through something that has constitutional protections. So what doesn't have constitutional protections? Things that you leave somewhere.
Yep.
Things that you, depending on the state, throw away.
Discard. Trash again.
Things that aren't yours.
We're going to hit trash rips on every single episode.
I bet we probably could.
That's a goal.
You have a constitutional right to be free in everything that you have.
It's the government looking for something they can't readily see.
Yes.
Right? Opening something, peeking into something.
Spying.
Yep. Pretty much being creepy.
Yeah, putting a GPS on your car.
Right. Taking your trash. See, we did that twice. Got it. Nailed it. The other area that people oftentimes forget, that Fourth Amendment, that is actionable against a government. First of all, what type of entities does the Fourth Amendment, First Amendment, Bill of Rights protect us against?
State actors.
State actors. So, private schools?
Sucks to be you.
Sucks to be you. You can't, you can try to raise it.
You're not going to get rich off a lawsuit.
Nope, you're not. You're not getting paid for a private institution interfering with your constitutional right as it relates to searches, seizures, and First Amendment, because it's not government conduct.
Yep. I couldn't sue you for going through my desk.
You could.
Well, yeah.
For
not successfully.
That kind of thing.
Yeah. But based on a unreasonable search.
You could not say, you couldn't say I violated your constitutional rights. Because you don't have any.
Because you're not a state actor.
I'm not a state actor. I do what I want. But they could be individually responsible for violations of privacy if the privacy exists. But the one thing that I think a lot of people miss with the Fourth Amendment causes of action are seizures include touches, grabs, punches, use of force. Use of force by a government entity or government actor is a seizure of the person.
Yep.
So shooting, we have cases pending right now where police shoot somebody. grabbing them, holding them, restraining them,
Handcuffs.
back
of patrol car,
kicking them in the butt across the floor.
Yep.
Those are seizures by government actors.
Yep.
If it's a state employed teacher, those are actionable, and you can bring a lawsuit for a violation of those constitutional rights pursuant to a federal law that we'll talk about in a hot second.
Okay.
The other area that creates causes of action is written laws.
Yep.
Like we talked about, prohibiting teaching outside of the English language. They can, the state and federal have created laws that say schools, school districts, and states can't do certain things, or they can get sued.
Yep.
Like what?
One of them, Title IX.
Okay, we hear about Title IX all the time these days.
It is a anti-discrimination statute that allows people, it doesn't expressly allow it, but it's been interpreted to allow causes of action when you are intentionally treated differently based on gender or sex. So the word intentionally doesn't mean intentionally harmed. It means intentionally treated differently.
Okay.
So that is one of the standards that they hold school districts, private schools even potentially in some instances, college campuses, they all have to gives equal opportunity to education regardless of the gender of the potential student.
Okay. And that's federal.
Yep.
What's another federal kind of cause of action that can comply in schools?
The ADA.
Okay, what is the ADA?
That is not on the top of my head right now.
Americans with Disabilities
Yes. Not going to be able to pull that one out of.
So, and generally speaking, what is that? What is that? Those laws. What are those laws associated with that prohibit?
Violating if someone has a disability, they have the right to have reasonable accommodations, and a violation of those reasonable accommodations can lead to a cause of action and with potential monetary damages or injunction or whatever it is that someone's seeking.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, special needs or disabled students have just as much of a right to public education as those who don't have those, and the states are required to make it happen the best that they can within reason.
Yeah.
And then Iowa has a version of the ADA, which is the IADA. Yeah, I don't even remember what it's called, but I know where to find it. Ish. Sometimes. But it's in essence says, what the feds say, we say.
Yep.
So follow those rules, follow those laws, because they're required to. And then one of our favorites is 1983 actions.
1983.
And that's a code section that came about as a result of
Civil rights era,
because there were states that were not respecting people's civil rights. And under the 11th Amendment, states have immunity from lawsuit. And the feds came in and said, no, we're going to create a law that says if a person, not the state, but if a person is violating another person's constitutional rights under the color of state law, we're going to give them the right to sue that person for damages that result from it.
Yep.
So those 1983 actions we often will use with suing law enforcement for excessive force, unreasonable searches, but they can apply the same to schools as well. So if you got an illegal school search, you got an illegal school physical contact type situation, that can create a cause of action. And then the final one it's in state court. Well, it's related to federal too. But it's
a plain old negligence case.
Yeah, but before we get there.
Oh, just kidding. Bullying and harassment. Yes.
It's an issue.
It is.
And
teachers bullying kids is not uncommon.
Apparently
we're
not.
Coming to figure out.
You're right.
Weird.
It's scary, but there are situations, and I think that they're coming to light more because it's easier to document
Yeah.
and to find out about now more than back in the day where you didn't have cell phones, you didn't have easy ways to communicate. And as parents, we always say, school's in charge, do what the school tells you, respect the whole thing. It's your fault, you're probably being a brat. Half the time, if it was me, they're probably right. But there are situations where there are people in power, like in any profession, in teaching as well, that flat out abuse, mentally, physically, emotionally, abuse students who get under their skin.
And who are forced to be in the same classroom as them all the time.
Yeah, and they're not cut out for it. And Iowa actually has a specific. It's a newer law. It hasn't been around. Probably wasn't around when I would have been in school. I don't know about when you were in school. We'll have to look that up. That'd be interesting. But they have a specific prohibition against bullying and harassment. And it flat out says that this is a good law that they passed. We're not going to make fun of them for this one. This is a good one. We want this to keep
You're
going.
safe today.
They're safe today. We're not going to rag on our legislature today, other than when they didn't let the guy teach in German.
Yeah.
But that was 1919.
Yeah, that was 100 years ago.
This is the new assembly. But it flat out said harassment and bullying behavior can seriously disrupt the ability of school employees to maintain a safe and civil environment. Therefore, it's the policy of the state of Iowa that school employees, volunteers, and students in Iowa schools shall not engage in harassing or bullying behavior.
That's a good law.
It's a great law.
It's hard to imagine a safe classroom, especially if a teacher is a bully.
Yeah. They even define what bullying and harassment is.
Let's hear it.
You want to know what it is?
I would love to.
All right. I'm going to paraphrase it because the full legal definition is a little boring. Well,
They usually are.
They are. But bullying and harassment includes any electronic, written, verbal, or physical act or conduct toward a student which is based on an actual or perceived trait or characteristic of the student and which creates an objectively hostile school environment. And has to also one of the following. Places a student in reasonable fear of harm of person and property, results in a substantial detrimental effect on physical or mental health, substantially interferes with academic performance, or substantially interferes with the ability to benefit or participate in services, activities, or privileges provided by the school. So it's relatively broad.
Yeah, it is.
It's relatively broad, but it's in essence, I mean, we know a bully when you see a bully.
Yeah, and you don't pick on someone. It's a good definition. You don't pick on someone for a specific trait that you know of.
Correct.
Or you perceive.
Or characteristic.
Yep. And when that does harm, there's going to be consequences.
There's going to be consequences. They're going to be important consequences if the school does it correctly.
Yes.
And handles it correctly. Because what we have learned in these cases is not every school or school district knows how to handle these things correctly.
Yeah.
Like the last episode, Wiener picture, principal's kid.
Principal's kid. Bad.
Not handled correctly.
No.
Open yourself up. Not investigating is a big problem by schools. Not taking it seriously. We won't go into the details of it, but the wrestling situation, was it Rolling Story?
Yep.
Rolling Story?
Yeah.
I think that was what it was. Schools in a world of hurt because of how they didn't handle that correctly.
Mm-hmm.
And what we found out is that schools are required. Did you know? This is a huge did you know? Did you know that every district is required to report to the State Board of Education and the state a list of bullying statistics?
I did not know that.
Nope. What's the one thing all administrators want?
Money.
And?
Power.
And?
Donuts. Yeah,
I guess. They want to be looked at as being great at their job.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
They want to be perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Are you perfect if you're reporting that you have bullying and harassment going on in your school?
Not in an administrator's eyes, probably.
Nope. They're worried about having to tell on themselves
Yep.
and submit the forms to the state saying, by the way, this year we had 5 incidents of bullying. Here's what they were. Here's generally what they are. Because there is a database that is maintained regarding bullying and harassment.
Interesting.
So what we found is they try to keep it. Shh, 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 shh.
Yeah.
Don't tell mom. Don't tell mom. Right? Don't tell daddy. Don't tell daddy the state.
And then when they tell, and then they tell the parents of the kids, no, it's okay. We'll have it all figured out. Just maybe don't file that complaint with the board. We can just deal with this here.
Yep, we're gonna handle it because if the complaint isn't, the formal complaints aren't filed, then we look at it as administrators as we don't have the obligation to report it to the state.
Mm-hmm.
And if we don't tell the state, then we look good, and we're Waukee School District. We're doing everything perfect.
LOL. Do you know what the ramifications for a school that doesn't report truthfully are?
No,
Probably none.
probably none. But that's where the next thing that we were talking, that you were ready to say,
Negligence.
negligence. So school districts can be held civilly accountable when their failure to act and failure to do their job correctly results in harm to somebody.
Yep.
When can that happen?
When they're negligent.
Yeah. What kind of situations? Tell me different ways they could be negligent.
Not supervising children
Mm-hmm.
or supervising children. They're in the room as they're supposed to be, but they're not actually paying attention to what's happening. Potentially like repeated instances of a child being hurt. Where
I'm student Bobby, you're student Sydney, and I'm making fun of you.
Yep.
I'm taunting you. I am making every single day you have to go to school a living hell.
Yep.
And then maybe I start getting physical.
Yep. And
And
no one ever stopped sit.
Nobody stops
Yep.
it. You report it, your mom reports it, and they're just saying, oh, Sydney's being dramatic.
Oh, that's just Bobby.
She just loves the drama.
Yep.
Right? And so just suck it up, kid. And they don't act. And then I come and I whomp you.
Yep.
I bust you up. Now they're in big trouble.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's those types of situations. It's turning the blind eye.
Yep.
You know, sexual assaults happen in school.
Yeah, which is crazy.
It's scary, the fact that it happens in school. And I mean, we have 2 cases right now in this office that happened in school. And they have an obligation to make sure students are supervised, which would include what?
I don't know, watching your classroom.
Check in, check out of classrooms, hall monitoring, making sure, you know, the janitor closet isn't accessible to people to get pulled. You know, there's all kinds of different scenarios that they have a duty and an obligation to be proactive.
Yep.
And to make sure that students are safe, and then to remedy situations when it's brought to their attention.
Yeah, which is also another one too. Like duty, they have a duty to train teachers.
Yes.
Teachers need to be trained. They I'm sure want to be trained more about things that they're seeing, potential warning signs. They are the hands-on with the kids.
They have one of the toughest jobs
Yeah.
out there is to be an actual teacher, to be a teacher, to be in a classroom, to have to deal with overcrowding, kids that don't want to be there. And it's the administration's duty to give them the tools
Yep.
necessary to protect the kids, to supervise the kids, and to help them with making sure kids are safe and that teachers can focus on teaching and helping kids learn. Administration's job is security, I think. Like if you're looking at it from my perspective, the building, what goes on in the building, people being safe, people being protected, is administration.
Yeah.
And whether it's from teachers, from other staff, other students, teachers should be allowed and equipped with what they need to teach. Administration should be protecting.
Yes.
But yeah, so failing to train, failing to supervise, failing to say, hey, you need a check-in and a check-in out policy.
Yeah.
And that circles back all the way around to the current event of if there was indeed a rumor or notification that there's a firearm on campus, communication.
Yeah.
How are they equipping them to effectively communicate?
Which is also just like kind of a wild concept. I like have memories, and I don't have many of them, but I do have memories as a child being in school on the intercoms. Mm-hmm. They would come in on the intercoms and they would say, teachers, check your email. Like,
oh, yeah. Yep.
It's
I went to
clearly
school before
there's teachers up around doing other things, but they have the ability to talk to everyone in the building.
Yep.
And they can even do it discreetly.
Or you know what, like what law enforcement does? You have a code.
Yeah.
Teachers code red.
Yep.
Code orange. Something for a missing child is another thing, is communicating when a child leaves the classroom or campus and they don't know and they can't find them. It's a hard job, but they got to be able to.
Kids, yeah.
You make kids go to school. It's a crime for them not to go to school. Well, you damn well better protect them when they're at school.
Yep.
And if you don't, and especially if you're on notice, and that brings us to our action points really for this episode.
Yep.
If they're on notice and fail to act, that's when they get lit up.
Yeah, that's when you know that this isn't just something crazy spontaneously happened. This is a series of events that led to this negative consequence.
We call it intentional disregard.
Yes.
Is really what it comes down to.
Being not respectfully defiant.
Yeah.
I tried to do something there in my head, but
that's the governmental arrogance.
Yes.
You tell us, too bad, everybody bow to us. We know better. So
what do we do? What are our action points?
I got these. You ready for them?
I'm ready.
Action point 1, document.
Yep.
Document.
How do you document?
Save your Snapchats, because everybody's using Snapchats.
Pictures, videos. If there's injuries.
Picture. Writing down summaries, doing what you can to think about it, prove to somebody else that you've never met that a person you trust or that we want to trust broke that trust.
Yep.
Right? And then the second most important is written reporting.
And who do you give your written report to?
So, as of last episode, we said that the student handbook is the Bible for schools.
And they're not going to give it to you.
No, it's online.
It's online. It's probably online, but they're not going to give a high school student or an elementary school student the handbook.
That's not on your desk at the beginning of class the first day. It's, by the way, it's available online.
Yep.
So you go to
if you're lucky, it'll open. The link will open.
The district's website. And they have very specific reporting procedures for a reason.
Yep.
To make it hard.
Yeah.
Because they don't want to have to report to the state that these bad things are happening under their watch in their school. And so you get in the handbook, you figure out the reporting process, and you make a written formal report pursuant to that process. There's a form to fill out. You fill that form out. You sign that form. Put it in writing. You're documenting things. And you keep a copy of that form. And you submit it as you're required to. And you keep a copy of the fact that you submitted that report. And you ask when you submit it for confirmation that they received that report.
Yep.
And what that report does then is it triggers the requirement of an investigation. It's called a level 1 investigation. And the report is made to the school board, not to the principal, not to the administrator, but usually to the school board. And there's a designated investigator that then has to come in and get the facts and figure out if there's a basis for the claim and then move it along. But going through a written complaint process, I think there's an argument that emails are sufficient.
Okay.
Emails are better than in-person talking because there's a digital trail. But if I'm in that situation, I'm following the formal report submission.
Exactly as they say to do
Exactly as. And following it up with an email.
Yeah.
FYI, sent this in. Here's an extra copy. copy everybody and their mom, send it to every member of the board if you really have to. And I'm talking these big legitimate complaints, things that are going on that you try as a parent to resolve. You always want to try to resolve things if you can. But at some point in time, you realize gloves have to come off. I have to protect my child. I have to protect my people. And once that happens, it's follow the procedures that they give you, written report, email copies, save copies of everything.
Yeah, keep everything documented, all your documents. And then what happens?
Hopefully an investigation happens. You want to cooperate with the investigation, provide whatever information you can. You may not agree with the investigation, but at least there is a source now of discovery if a civil lawsuit gets filed. There's civil lawsuits that can happen as well. Obviously, if a kid gets seriously injured, hurt, sexually assaulted, there's you need to lawyer up.
Yeah.
If they're legitimate serious injuries, if it's a big problem, you lawyer up. You get the advice of somebody who knows what to do and how to do it.
And you make their life a whole lot easier when you have documents.
Documentation is important, and and say a civil lawsuit isn't going to be worth not worth, but they take a lot of mental and emotional capital. And sometimes people will look at it and say, I don't want to drag my kid through that.
Yeah.
I don't want to drag myself through that. And that is completely understandable. There are alternatives to formal litigation.
Like license.
You tell us.
I know one of them is teacher's license.
Okay.
You can, I think it's OPR, file a complaint with them, which I'm sure starts some sort of a similar investigation on their end.
Iowa Board of Education.
Yep.
You can file a formal complaint if it's a licensed teacher or licensed administrator.
Civil rights, Iowa's Civil Rights Commission.
Yep. If it's based upon race, gender, one of the protected classes in Iowa, if you believe that this is occurring because of a violation of civil rights, then the Civil Rights Office is where you go, and obviously the school board as well. But you don't have to sit there. You want to make complaints. You want to do it in a way that is respectfully defiant.
Yep.
You don't want to, you're not going to slug teachers. You're not going to do anything like that, but you're going to make sure your people are adequately protected and then also vindicated.
Clear picture of what happened.
You want to be succinct.
Yep.
You want to be direct. Have things organized, lawyer up for sure. And there's things that can be done.
Yeah.
But you want to make sure to follow the right processes, because if you don't, their favorite excuse for not having to report themselves.
We didn't know.
You didn't follow the right process.
Yeah, give them a reason to know.
Yep. Give them a reason to know, and don't give them that out on the excuse of, well, you didn't follow our handbook procedure. Okay. Here's your handbook. Whomp them over the head with the handbook.
Sweet.
Sweet.
Easier said than done.
It is. It's a challenge, and as a parent, you want to tell your kids, knock it off. It's hard to tell, but if there's things documented and you're able to really see that there's a profound impact or serious injury or serious things actually happen, then it's time to light some people up, because that's how you force change.
Yeah.
That's how you have that positive impact, like we talked about with Corey, of making sure the school is safer and a better place for the kids to learn.
Yep. For the next kids.
For the next kids.
So we forgot to do our quote of the month.
Yeah.
And this one's a good one.
Okay.
So
we'll do a hard break. We talked about some serious stuff.
Yep.
And now we're going to flip the script.
To some funny things. And of course, the do's and don'ts of
do's and don'ts of donut. But then the golden quote of the month is school related.
No.
It's not. So
kind of. I was a student attorney when I jotted this one down.
Oh, so this is a donut special.
This is a donut special.
Direct from the Drake Legal Clinic.
Yep.
Okay. See, thanks.
This is actually maybe, I think, one of our best t-shirt opportunities.
Yes.
But
that's not a bad idea.
I know, it's pretty good.
Okay. Set it up.
All right.
What's the situation?
Scene. I'll set the scene.
Yes.
Okay. Scene is client cuffed and stuffed. in the back of the car. Officer up front. And, you know, I'm not going to lie. I don't really think that the officer was trying to talk to my client. He was proactively trying to assert his rights.
Okay.
But this is something I wrote down from the body cam footage because I knew that maybe I would have to get it like tattooed on me someday.
So old boy is in the back of the squad car, cuffed and stuffed. He knows his constitutional rights.
He's been around the block.
He's got an idea.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, and I quote, the golden quote of the month. I want legal representation before I answer any more fucking communications, questions, PBTs, or peanut butter and jellies.
Yep. You know what? I have never been
Amazing.
so proud. I watched that and I'm like, hell yeah.
Nailed it.
No PBTs, no PBJs, and no communications.
That's what you call effective invocation of
For
your
real.
right to counsel.
They make it hard.
Mhm.
You have to verbalize. Fun fact, you have to say, I am invoking my right to remain silent.
Or
You just add a few other things in there too.
nailed it.
He did great. It's no
That's a hero.
PB&Js.
That
That's
is-
a hero.
I mean, defiance. It fits the defiance theme.
It does.
Respectful. He didn't call the officer names at that
No.
point, anyways.
And he it was funny.
I'll give him respectfully defiant. award.
Absolutely.
All right.
All right.
Do's and don'ts.
To end it, we're gonna do a do's and don'ts with Donut. Interesting. We've never done something like this in a do's and don'ts with Donut. Usually we go like criminal or
We've gone crazy.
Yeah.
Okay.
But this one's just kind of funny, I think.
Okay.
It doesn't have a title, but my brother was diagnosed with aggressive terminal illness. This isn't the funny part.
I was going to
Sorry.
say.
And he passed away 5 weeks later. The family wasn't told until a week before he passed, so we missed out on spending critical time with him. Not to mention that in that time, he and his partner were busy making plans without any care for the rest of us. My parents are very distraught over the entire situation. There's no funeral. My brother was not buried, but instead was cremated, and he had a will drawn up that excludes all of us, even though he had no children. But basically, parents are disabled and got cut off. They got legally married right after he was diagnosed. The money, the will, that's one issue. But his partner is also refusing to share a portion of my brother's ashes with us. My parents wanted a portion so that they could properly bury him. But they are refusing to give us any of the ashes, and his partner is being unreasonable. Is there anything that we can do about this?
Jim!
You have a right to die and leave a will.
You do.
And there's a disconnect with this family.
Clearly.
Yeah, and I think that it's probably relatively common.
Yeah.
But just because someone becomes severely ill right away doesn't mean that they can't get married.
True.
It doesn't mean that they can't control how their assets are distributed.
1,000% true.
Doesn't mean that they can't say, I want to be cremated
True.
and not buried.
I'm getting put in fireworks.
Yeah.
I am.
That's
It's in my will.
interesting. But I think that that's like a disconnect that families have sometimes is, which is understandable. Like you're going through grief, whatever,
Yeah.
terrible times. But you do, as a individual, have the right to kind of control how the end of your life looks.
This is absolutely why you have a will.
Yeah.
You put things in writing before you pass.
Yep.
Whether you expect to pass or not,
Yep.
you get to control. If you put it down in writing and you go through the proper procedures, you have the right to control what happens with your money,
Yep.
with your property, with your body,
Yep.
and with your legacy party, as I like to call
Mm-hmm.
them. You get to direct everybody else, and you're dead, they got to listen to you one last time.
Yep.
It's like the ultimate mic drop.
Yep.
Now, could there be a situation where that may not be enforceable?
Yes.
Like what?
If it were fraud, duress, if he didn't get 2 witnesses to sign his will, if they don't have there's things that can go wrong with the validity of a will.
So that's where the focus is going to have to happen. Not what's moral, not what you want to happen.
And not what the family thinks afterwards. That's not what.
Correct.
That's not the focus of estates and the probate procedure or writing wills. That's for the person to control what happens after. And honestly, it seems like he made the right decision, right? The fact that there's a Reddit post from the brother that's mad about the marriage and the will and the cremation, it seems like this guy, which a tragedy, he only had 5 weeks to live, but it seems like he knew right away that like this was going to be a problem.
Handled it.
And handled it.
So people are afraid, or people don't like to think about death, especially when it's involving wills and medical powers of attorney and that kind of thing. That's one way to look at getting a will done.
Yeah.
I like looking at a will like the decedent in this case, which is, it is your last opportunity
to tell someone what to do.
To pick up a win.
And be respectfully defiant.
And be respectfully freaking defiant.
To your parents.
Absolutely. You brought it all the way around at the wrap up. The respectfully defiant. You want to be respectfully defiant? Get a will, and you get to tell everybody else what to do after you're dead.
Ask your family what they think, and then do exactly the opposite.
Do what you want.
Respectfully defiant, mic drop.
Boom.
It's a good way to
go out?
To go out, yeah.
That's why I'm in fireworks.
That's funny.
Cheers.
Cheers.
See you next episode.
We can't change the past, but we will change your future. GRL Law. Thanks for tuning in to GRL Raw. Check us out at grllaw.com.